The story begins with Emily Carter, a 29-year-old woman living in Chicago, Illinois, on a quiet autumn morning. Emily is a dedicated marketing professional, living the dream of a successful career at a respected company. She's always prided herself on her balanced life, a good job, a solid relationship with her boyfriend Lucas, and a longtime best friend, Hannah, with whom she has shared many phases of her life. Emily feels grateful for everything she's achieved. She believes her inner circle is her greatest support system. Lucas is her emotional anchor, and Hannah is like a sister, someone who's been by her side through thick and thin. But in recent weeks, Emily begins noticing subtle changes, a strange distance from Lucas, and odd behavior from Hannah. Small things that once seemed insignificant start to bother her. She feels a hint of distrust but can't pinpoint why. The first major revelation comes when Emily finds a message on Lucas's phone that shakes her to her core. The message from Hannah is full of flirtation and secrets she never imagined. Shocked and betrayed, Emily faces a devastating choice about how to deal with this discovery. Her best friend and boyfriend appear to be involved in something she never anticipated right under her nose. After uncovering the messages between Lucas and Hannah, Emily spirals emotionally. Her initial shock turns into a mix of anger, sadness, and deep betrayal. She tries to confront Lucas rationally, asking if there's anything he wants to confess. Lucas, caught off guard, tries to brush it off, but Emily no longer buys his vague excuses. Emily decides to confront Hannah, but this time she seeks answers because Hannah has been her confidant. They've always shared secrets and laughter, and Emily never imagined Hannah would betray her like this. When they finally meet at a cafe near Lake Michigan, Emily doesn't waste time and asks, "Why?" Hannah turns pale, but tries to remain calm, initially denying everything. But when Emily presents proof, the screenshots of the messages, Hannah can no longer deny it. She starts to cry, saying it wasn't serious, that it was a mistake that happened only once and would never happen again. Now, Emily faces a dilemma. She loves Lucas, who up until now has shown no signs of betraying her. At the same time, her years-long friendship with Hannah has been a crucial part of her life. But is there room for forgiveness when the two people she trusted most have broken that trust? Things get even more complicated when Emily discovers that Hannah and Lucas are still meeting, even after the initial confrontation. One night, following her instincts, Emily goes to Lucas's apartment and, to her horror, sees Hannah leaving late at night. This new betrayal feels like a punch to the gut. Enraged, Emily decides she needs distance from both of them. Emily temporarily moves in with her sister, Sarah, a lawyer who has always been a support for her. Sarah insists that Emily should cut ties with both Lucas and Hannah, but Emily feels she still needs answers. Here, Sarah's role becomes more significant. She offers Emily a more rational perspective on the situation, suggesting that maybe it's best to leave them both behind and focus on her own well-being. Sarah also encouraged Emily to consider therapy to process the emotional impact of the betrayal, as it's clear she's devastated and confused. Another key figure emerges at this point, Mark, a colleague of Emily's who has always shown interest in her, though she never took him seriously. He becomes a supportive friend during this time, offering a shoulder to lean on with no strings attached. Although he's not the focus, Mark may play an important role in Emily's future emotional journey as the story progresses. Days after her heartbreaking discovery, Emily is emotionally drained. She finally decides to take Sarah's advice and schedule a therapy session. On her way to the clinic, she gets an unexpected call from Lucas. His voice is desperate, begging her to listen to him one last time. He confesses that, yes, something happened between him and Hannah, but that his feelings for Emily are far more important. He insists it was a moment of weakness, a string of mistakes, but that he never meant to hurt her. Angry and pained, Emily hangs up, unsure if she should give any weight to Lucas's words. Hours later, after her therapy session, Emily receives another call, this time from Sarah. With a shaky voice, Sarah tells her that Hannah has been in a serious accident and is in the hospital. Apparently, while driving, Hannah was hit by another vehicle at an intersection. Her condition is critical, and the doctors are unsure if she will survive. Emily feels a wave of conflicting emotions, relief over the forced separation created by the accident, but also a heavy guilt she didn't expect. This news hits Emily hard and unexpectedly. Despite all the resentment she feels toward Hannah, she realizes that the idea of losing someone she shared so many moments with affects her more deeply than she thought. Emily faces a difficult choice. Should she forgive Hannah on her deathbed or hold on to her anger as a shield? Emily's internal struggle reaches a peak. She starts to question if it's worth holding on to so much bitterness. Does Hannah and Lucas's betrayal justify this prolonged pain? Her mind is a whirlwind, but Hannah's accident has surfaced a feeling Emily thought she had buried: the vulnerability of losing someone close. Lucas, meanwhile, makes desperate attempts to reconnect with Emily after the accident. He shows up at Sarah's house, begging Emily to hear him out. He argues that the accident was a wake-up call, a chance for everyone to reflect on their mistakes. Emily is torn. Part of her wants to confront him once and for all, while another part wants to listen. Emily decides to go to the hospital not for Hannah, but for herself. She needs closure on all of this. When she arrives, she finds Lucas by Hannah's side, both of them in tears. This is the moment of the final revelation. Lucas admits he never truly loved Hannah. He reveals that he was caught in a cycle of confusion and desire, but he always knew his heart belonged to Emily. Yet, in this vulnerable moment, Hannah, even in her fragile state, confesses something unexpected. She's always been jealous of Emily, and her actions were driven by envy, not love for Lucas. This revelation shifts the emotional dynamic of the story. Emily realizes that the issue was never her, but rather Hannah's internal conflicts, consumed by envy. Lucas, in turn, was merely a pawn in this unresolved game of emotions. Now, Emily has all the cards on the table. She can choose to move on and completely leave this toxic relationship behind, or she can seek forgiveness and rebuilding. However, the most significant revelation for Emily doesn't come from Hannah's or Lucas's words, but from discovering that she no longer has to be a prisoner to these emotions. In that moment, she decides her life will not be defined by betrayal, but by the way she chooses to move forward. Emily rises with a clarity she hadn't felt in weeks, deciding that, while forgiveness may be an option, her priority now is to rebuild her own life, with or without Lucas and Hannah. After the final revelation at the hospital, Emily chooses to focus on herself. In the weeks that follow, she distances herself completely from Lucas and Hannah, refusing to fuel more suffering by keeping them in her life. Although it's tempting to listen to Lucas's pleas to rebuild their relationship, Emily understands that the trust has been broken in a way that cannot easily be repaired. Initially, this distance leaves her feeling lost, unsure of how to move forward. For so long, they were her anchors, and now, suddenly, she is without the two most significant pillars in her life. The first step, however, is the hardest. She seeks help from her therapist, who encouraged her to focus on self-care and reconnect with who she is outside of these relationships. Emily starts making small changes. She returns to her old habit of running in the park, something she'd abandoned during the emotional turmoil of the past few months. She also picks up painting again, a hobby she'd loved since childhood but had set aside under the pressures of adult life. These simple activities begin to restore her sense of control and clarity. In this process of rediscovery, Emily realizes something essential. Her happiness never depended solely on Lucas or Hannah. While those relationships were important, the mistake had been allowing those connections to define her entire sense of worth. Now, she decides she must prioritize herself, her personal growth, and her mental health. A pivotal moment of reflection occurs when Emily receives a letter from Hannah. Still recovering in the hospital, Hannah expresses her genuine regret, admitting that envy had always been there. Despite trying to ignore it, her uncontrolled emotions ultimately destroyed her friendship with Emily. Hannah asks for forgiveness, hoping one day to repair what was broken. Reading the letter, Emily feels a mix of emotions. On one hand, there's relief in seeing that Hannah acknowledges her mistakes. On the other, she realizes that forgiveness isn't just for the other person, it's also a way to free herself from the weight of resentment. Emily decides that forgiving Hannah doesn't mean resuming the friendship. It means allowing herself to leave that pain in the past. Over the following months, Emily feels emotionally stronger. Mark, her colleague who has always been a quiet but consistent presence, begins to play a bigger role in her life. He isn't connected to her painful past, offering her a chance to move forward without old emotional burdens. Mark becomes a good friend, someone she can rely on who supports her without judgment. Gradually, Emily sees that a new chance for love might be possible, but this time, she chooses carefully, valuing trust and respect. Her sister, Sarah, remains a steady presence at her side, always encouraging Emily to reconnect with her purpose and not let the hardships she's faced hold her back. Sarah also suggests that Emily take a break, leave Chicago for a while, and breathe new air, perhaps finding new meaning in her life. Taking this advice to heart, Emily begins planning a trip, a sabbatical to explore new places and maybe discover who she's become after everything. This journey is not an escape, but a conscious choice to explore what the future might offer, far from past trauma. As she prepares for her trip, Emily feels more confident and ready to turn the page. She plans to spend a month traveling along the west coast of the United States, starting in San Francisco and heading down to Los Angeles. However, before leaving, there's still something unresolved. Lucas. Since Hannah's accident, Emily has kept her distance from Lucas, refusing to rekindle the relationship despite his numerous attempts to regain her trust. But she still feels the weight of unspoken words lingering between them. A day before her trip, Emily decides to meet with Lucas one last time for a definitive closure. They arrange to meet at a cafe near Lake Michigan, the same place where Emily first confronted Hannah. The atmosphere is heavy, but Lucas seems calm, as if he's finally accepted that Emily now holds the power in this situation. Lucas begins to speak, apologizing again, this time with more sincerity and less desperation. He admits that what happened with Hannah was about him, not about Emily. His own fears and insecurities led him to seek validation outside their relationship, only to realize too late that what he had with Emily was unique. Emily, in turn, feels a wave of emotions, but this time, there's no anger. There's a strange calm, as if she already knew how this story would end. She listens to everything Lucas has to say, but deep down, she knows this relationship is beyond repair. Though there are still feelings, the trust has been irreparably broken. In the most emotional moment of the meeting, Lucas asks if there's any chance of starting over. Emily looks him in the eye and, with a firm yet serene voice, says, "I forgive you, but I can't go back. I deserve better." This line is the emotional climax of the story, where Emily finally frees herself from the past, closing the chapter of pain and disappointment. Lucas understands that this is the end, and though saddened, he respects her decision. Leaving the cafe, Emily feels as if a tremendous weight has been lifted from her shoulders. The emotional closure she so desperately needed has finally arrived. She holds no more resentment, but she also doesn't feel the need to keep Lucas in her life. She's forgiven him, but at the same time, has chosen her own peace of mind. At that moment, Emily decides to send a quick message to Hannah, still in the hospital. The message is brief but meaningful. "I forgive you. I hope you find your path." It's the final step she needed to take to close this chapter of her life with maturity and grace. The next morning, Emily boards her flight to San Francisco. As the plane takes off, she looks out the window and feels a mix of excitement and freedom. For the first time in a long time, Emily feels that her life is completely in her hands, free from the toxic influences of relationships that had caused her pain. Emily arrives in San Francisco filled with plans but open to whatever life has to offer. During the trip, she reconnects with the joy of simple things: the sunrise over the Golden Gate Bridge, the sound of the waves at Santa Monica Beach, the vibrant energy of Los Angeles. These experiences bring her a sense of peace and renewal. Mark also remains a part of her life, though in a light and uncomplicated way. They exchange messages occasionally, and Mark makes a point of reminding Emily that she's much stronger than she ever realized. He doesn't rush any kind of relationship, but is there to support her whenever she needs it. After her journey along the West Coast, Emily returns to Chicago with a fresh perspective on life. She has not only regained her inner peace, but has also rebuilt a healthier relationship with herself. The time away has given her the clarity to understand that her happiness was never tied to those around her, but to her own capacity for growth and reinvention. Back at work, Emily feels more confident and balanced, dedicating herself to new projects that have come her way. Mark, who supported her from afar throughout her journey, is still around, but now their interactions have a new tone. With a lighter heart, Emily begins to see Mark in a different light. What was once purely friendship is now growing into something deeper, based on mutual trust and understanding. However, Emily's life no longer revolves around romantic relationships. She decides to focus on her career and personal projects. She enrolls in a local art school to paint more regularly, a rediscovered passion that has become a powerful outlet for her emotions and a symbol of her emotional freedom. Meanwhile, Hannah and Lucas's lives also move on. Hannah slowly recovers from the accident, though her friendship with Emily will never be the same. They don't become friends again, but Hannah respects Emily's decision to keep her distance. She understands that some wounds are too deep to heal, but she's grateful for the forgiveness Emily extended. Lucas, on the other hand, goes on with his life, but his relationship with Hannah doesn't survive the accident or the emotional fallout of the betrayal. For a while, he tries to connect with new people, but he never finds in anyone else what he had with Emily. He respects Emily's choice and no longer attempts to force a reunion. Over time, he grows and learns from his mistakes, though he always carries the weight of what he lost. Emily's story, in the end, is about personal growth, forgiveness, and self-discovery. The challenges she faced helped her realize that her strength comes from within. The forgiveness she offered, both to Lucas and Hannah, was more about freeing herself than absolving them. Emily understands that, while people may disappoint us, it's up to us to decide how these experiences shape us. Emily no longer allows others' expectations to define her worth. She is now focused on building a fulfilling life, surrounded by people who respect her space and emotions. By accepting that her happiness is in her own hands, Emily becomes the protagonist of her own story. Months later, Emily hosts her first art exhibit in a local gallery. Her paintings, vibrant and full of emotion, reflect the whirlwind of feelings she experienced during that difficult period in her life. At the exhibit, she notices how many new, positive people have entered her life, including Mark, who is now by her side in a meaningful but pressure-free way. They don't label their relationship, but the connection they share is genuine and sincere. What began as a solid friendship has evolved into something deeper, built on the respect and trust that Emily now values above all. The final painting in the exhibit, titled Freedom *, captures Emily finally letting go of her fears, insecurities, and the past. Looking at the piece, she smiles, knowing that everything she went through has shaped her into the strong, determined woman she is today. Emily now understands that, however painful, some betrayals and losses can teach us powerful lessons about ourselves. Forgiveness, for her, wasn't just a way to bring peace to those who hurt her, but a way to find peace within herself. Her journey ends with her at peace, open to the future, and ready to write new chapters in her life, always knowing that, above all, she controls her own destiny. Emily has finally found happiness not in others, but within herself. Surrounded by new friends, a potential love with Mark, and a career that brings her fulfillment, she moves forward with confidence and lightness. The past is behind her, and now she's ready to embrace her future.